Joining me now to react are Vivek Ramaswamy, entrepreneur and author of Woke Inc., and Michael Knowles, host of the Michael Knowles Show, author of Speechless. Welcome, you guys. We were originally going to talk about something else, but Vivek, I wanted to start with this because this just came down a couple of minutes ago, and it strikes me as like this judge decided to throw the case out while the jury was deliberating their answer. He didn't even give it a chance to get back to see what the jury was going to say anyway. Vivek, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, look, I have to say that in this particular case, I actually think that that was the right ruling. The reason is that defamation actually has a really high standard when you're talking about high positions of public authority for public figures. So the general standard for defamation is that you generally have to have both a false statement that was also damaging. But when you're talking about a public figure, there's an added standard. I think it's in the New York Times versus Sullivan case, actually. You're catching me on my toes here, but from my law school days, I think that was the case, where you also have to have a third element, which is that they knew it was actually false or misleading. It was effectively in bad faith. And the reason we have that standard is to say that, you know what, we want an open system of public discourse in our press in this country, especially about figures who put themselves in the public limelight, about public figures. No doubt Sarah Palin was one of those figures. And so at the end of the day, the right answer, as I always say I say this to the left, but here I'll say it to everyone else too, is that the right answer to bad speech isn't less speech. It is more speech. And at the end of the day, if the New York Times wanted to say something mean about Sarah Palin, great. If she wants to be as vice presidential candidate for the United States, then she ultimately has to deal with that through ultimately the public square, where she has to assert her ideas and other people can assert ideas on her behalf in competition in the actual marketplace of ideas. So I say here, actually, the judge actually, legally speaking, actually, in my opinion, reached the correct decision here.
Okay, Knowles, what are your thoughts on this?
I have a slightly different take, which is, one, I think the judge absolutely was justified in his decision if the argument was that the New York Times is extremely ignorant. So the New York Times doesn't know much about anything, and the idea that they wouldn't have known what they were writing about is not surprising whatsoever. I think there was a tactical error here from the Palin group, which is they knew they were going to have a hostile judge, and so if they could have brought the suit with a friendlier judge, as a tactical matter, perhaps that would have been better. But I think that the left really abuses free speech. I think that the way that the left talks about free speech and associated ideas, academic freedom, and the free marketplace of ideas, for that matter, is merely an instrument to normalize their crazy views. So they'll always suppress conservative speech, and then they'll run to the defense of free speech when it suits them. And I think conservatives need to get a little tougher about this, defend our own standards. And if Palin could have brought suit in a more friendly court, I think it would have been lovely to see the New York Times' hands get slapped, because we can't let these woke corporations to continue get away with this absolute madness and calumny and defamation of half the country.
So, Eric, if I may, if I may, I just want to say,
let me just ask this question.
Yeah,
there's something here that's standing out to me. It's the suppression of free speech. Now, here it went to a court in New York City, but as Michael points out, with people on the right, it's not the court system that suppresses free speech. It's the court of public opinion through the cancel culture. And it feels like, on the right, you're constantly, you can't even get a fair trial in the court of public opinion with a cancel culture. But the left seems to always get that benefit because it doesn't go that route. It goes right to the court system, which both sides would be thrown out if it were equally administered the justice. Your thoughts, Vivek?
I agree with what you just said. I agree with what Michael just said. The playing standards are absolutely uneven today in favor of the left, and conservatives are at a disadvantage. However, I think the right way forward for the conservative movement is not to play the victimhood card. That's what the left does. We have been built on a victimhood culture created by the neo-progressive movement. The right shouldn't claim the victimhood card and ultimately claim to be a victim and ultimately enter this victimhood Olympics where we're in a race to the bottom. I think we need to lead the way to say that, you know what, we actually are the political movement that stands for free and open debate today. Maybe that's what liberals wanted 50 years ago. That is what it means to be a conservative today, is that you are free to express your opinion. Your neighbor is free to express his opinion. And even if you disagree, you both should be able to do so without fear of putting food on the dinner table. table, without cancel culture, without the use of force to supplant free speech and open debate to settle a political question. And so I think that part of leading the way means saying that, you know what, if you're Sarah Palin and the New York Times said something you didn't like about you, guess what? They get to say it. And you know what? The Wall Street Journal and Newsmax and anyone else is free to speak their mind too, to be able to say that we're leading the way against the fight against cancel culture rather than ultimately resorting to victimhood and practicing cancellation in our own right.
I ran out of time, you guys, because I want to get back to you, Michael, because I think the cancel culture is their own set of judge, jury, and executioner, and they only administer that to conservatives. Guys, I love having you. I'll bring you back, Michael. I owe you one next time. Sorry about that.